A coup in Myanmar. Biden says America's back. Uber buys Drizzly. Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl. The Trumpster is back on trial again in the Senate. We've got a new color blue. And there are missions to Mars. What a time to be alive. Let's get into the Huddle. This is Marc Ross. This is the latest episode of the Huddle. It's been such a crazy week since we've last met with you viewers. It's almost like you can believe Wilbur Ross when he says we're going to have condos on the moon. Brendan, where to start? Where are you watching this week?
Mark, this is one of these things that as the pandemic has gone on, a lot of people have been trying to figure out what newest episodes on Netflix can they watch to stay entertained. All you need is to open the news in order to find something to grab your attention. I know you mentioned it in the opening. One of the most interesting stories of the week for me has been the discovery of a new color blue. It's interesting that science can actually find such a thing. Meanwhile, we're also, looking at space missions to Mars from multiple countries who are entering the galactic race further into the universe. And of course, down here on planet Earth, we're embarrassing ourselves enough to make sure the aliens never come.
Yeah, you got a coup in Myanmar. You're right. I think what's happening this week around Mars with the first Arab satellite descending there, what the UAE is doing, China timing their Mars rover to hit during the Lunar New Year, and the U.S. NASA Perseverance orbiter that should be hitting any day now. What a time. And then, of course, you've got TB12 winning another Super Bowl. You've got the Trumpster back in the Senate, trial, impeachment. It is a lot to go on. Why do you even need Netflix when you've got the world of the interwebs and all the news out there to tell you what's happening?
We're going to get to the impeachment. Obviously, that's an important topic. But I do want to talk about this coup in Myanmar, not only to say that it's an important geopolitical issue, and it's something that I'm sure the Biden team is watching carefully because of what it spells for unrest in Asia. But this video circulated in the last week of a girl recording a workout routine while basically a military insurrection is happening behind her, and she's just dancing away. And I have to say, this is going to be, if you looked up aloof in the dictionary, I think this might be the prime example now.
Or focused. Here's a woman who's exercising so feverishly that she's not even paying attention to a coup. That is real focus. That is real discipline. She could be a Navy SEAL for all we know. But
do you think it says something about the TikTok generation where it's just record at all costs and it doesn't matter what's happening outside of your camera lens?
As somebody who is part of the Huddle experience, I'm all in for recording all the time. I have no idea what TikTok is. I have no idea what Snapchat is. But I do like exercising to a coup d'etat. I think that shows a new level of determination and focus that, we should appreciate here in the West.
Well, I think it's certainly a little bit of a different picture than what we saw on the Capitol grounds just a month ago on January 6th. Obviously, the ramifications of that are spilling over now. Talk to me about the first days of the impeachment trial in the Senate. This is really turning into an argument of two drastically different sides here.
Wow, that's to put it lightly. News reports from the Gold Leaf bunker in South Florida, Mar-a-Lago, suggest that Trump was less than pleased. He was very unhappy with his legal team in the opening arguments. They're almost sophomoric, that even his most loyal allies switched off and didn't even watch it. What Americans did watch, to great fanfare, was Jamie Raskin's opening argument. He's the lead House manager. He's a member of Congress from Maryland. Amazing story. I'm sure a lot of people have seen the video by now. If you haven't, you should certainly watch it. What he said from the floor of the Senate will certainly last not only for this generation, but for future generations. Here's a man who buried his son on January 5th, decided to take members of his family to the Capitol on January 6th to witness, for them to see the peaceful transfer of power, only for them to be separated during a riot, a murderous riot on Capitol Hill. I mean, it's some of the most powerful words I've ever seen spoken. Frankly, it made me proud to be an American and really express how fragile this democracy is.
This is broken down by two arguments that have nothing to do with each other, really. Is that Raskin is really arguing a really emotional side of this. He actually said, senators, we cannot let this be our future. And he tried to really tug on the heartstrings of his colleagues in government. Meanwhile, the Trump team was really focused on technicality. They were focused on the Constitution. They were focused on interpretation of legalese. And so I think what is a really interesting thing here is that this is almost like the idea of one side saying, well, we caught you red-handed, and the other side saying, but you didn't read me my Miranda rights. And so this disqualifies the legal objection, even though a crime was committed. And that's what I think is going to be hard for America to grapple with, no matter what the result here, is that this is going to be one side winning, no matter which one, based on a total rejection of the other side's plea.
Yeah, I don't think the country is going to be any better for it. I mean, I have never been a fan of Donald Trump. This is nothing new. So for me to see him get impeached for a second time, I'm all for it. I mean, democracy is an emotional thing. I mean, our democracy in particular isn't really based on land, geography, a common heritage. It's really based on a mission statement. Do we believe in these rules? Are these the rules we want to govern ourselves by? You would think a former president would take this more seriously, but everything so far has said he's not taking it very seriously. In fact, hopes to distract, and to your point, get off on technicalities.
I've been very much reminded of a legal case out of Massachusetts, the trial of a young girl named Michelle Carter. Michelle Carter was convicted after texting a young man she was involved with, and they were both actually somewhat mentally ill, and she kept telling him, I love you, I love you, I love you, but you should kill yourself if it's going to make you feel better. She actually went to prison for several years as a result of those actions. And the question at hand was, can you incite somebody into violence? That is the question at hand here with Donald Trump. And obviously, there's a big difference between a 16-year-old girl in Boston and the president of the United States. I think, like you said, nobody's going to be better as a result of this. I think the fatigue is strong with people when it comes to looking at this issue. But as you said last week, democracy is distasteful. This is not an idea of whether or not we enjoy this practice, but it needs to be done in order to uphold the full value of our institution.
I think this is a real gut check moment for American democracy. I applaud the House managers, what they're doing. Hopefully more Americans will take this seriously and really think about what it means to be an American. What does it mean to be living in this form of democracy?
The White House has continued to want to shy away from this. They want to definitely leave this in the hands of the legislative branch. I think it's a smart move for President Biden to try and stay away from anything to do with the opponent who he defeated in the election. But also, the press secretary said yesterday that she doesn't see any reason why they wouldn't keep on with the tradition of inviting the former president for a portrait unveiling sometime later in the next months.
I have no portrait revealings or portrait plans or portrait events to preview for you, but I have not been given any indication that we would break with tradition in that regard.
So right now, you're seeing that the White House is focused on their path. And even though I'm sure there are rooms full of people just watching every action in the impeachment, they're staying out of it.
Yeah, 100%. I think Joe Biden is doing the right thing. I think Jennifer Psaki, they're doing the right thing. They're staying focused. The executive branch has other things to do. There's some of these things happening around the world. So let's move on. Speaking of which, should we move on
to a new topic? We should. Last week I picked Tom Brady to be in my huddle. I said, the thing about Tom Brady is that he helps to make teams better. I think that goes without saying after the results in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, an amazing performance. Obviously, as a Michigan fan, somebody who can take credit for seeing Brady play in the big house years ago to see how well he's doing. Amazing performance, a real testament to his athletic prowess, but also his commitment and dedication. Amazing performance.
I know we wanted to look at a little bit of some of the soft power arguments here for how corporate America actually gets involved in politics.
You and me are maybe cursed by this because everything we look at when we see communications is through a lens of like, how is this going to play on Capitol Hill? How is this going to move voters? Is this a changing, emerging issue that we should be paying attention to? And I think the ads this year in the Super Bowl, I mean, there were certainly, ads to sell more beer and sell more Dorito chips. Thank you, Matthew McConaughey. But, the subtle undertones of like a changing culture. Big companies are placing big bets on where the country's going to go in 5 to 10 years. I think we saw that in some of the Super Bowl ads this past year.
When you have such a big audience, it is definitely a time for agenda setting, whether as a country or as a company, but also it's the idea of perhaps broaching some of these topics that maybe some people heard about, in the news. I wanted to say around the water cooler, but we haven't been doing much of that in 11 months.
Around the Zoom camera, maybe. Yeah.
Around the Zoom cameras.
I think what you said too about the internal communications aspect of this is super interesting. The founder of Patagonia would frequently talk about the most important audience is your internal audience. That is your employees. When you're a company and you want to plant a new direction, I know we're going to talk about the General Motors Will Ferrell ad, but here's a 100+ year company that's been producing combustion engines for most of their time, and they really want to pivot the company to a new direction. These ads are as much about telling consumers about where a company is going, but it's as much as saying to the team internally, hey, it's time to change direction. We've got a new focus, got a new energy. We're putting a lot of time and energy into this. We're so committed. We're telling the world what we're doing publicly at this huge audience. Super important.
Let's take a quick look at a clip from that ad.
Did you know that Norway sells way more electric cars per capita than the US? Norway. Well, I won't stand for it. Come on. Never mind. With GM's new Ultium battery, we're gonna crush those losers. Crush them! Let's go, America.
Mark, it's so funny watching this ad with Will Ferrell because there's almost this idea of trying to find a villain in the idea of electric cars, and I guess they've chosen Norway for outperforming our capacity to create electric vehicles. I thought with people like Elon Musk and everything, fossil fuels were the enemy. Why is it now that we've decided to try and make this combative?
The only thing I can think of, I don't understand this ad at all. I mean, obviously, it's not for. I guess it's not for me. I mean, certainly people love Will Ferrell. This ad tested super well, right? It scored really well. It also had Kenan Thomas from SNL, and you had Awkwafina, right? Am I saying her name right?
Yeah.
So you got some amazing stars, humorous. The only thing I can think of is that Will Ferrell, funny guy. He's married to a Swede. They're like, hey, we can make some fun of Norway, EVs. It's going to help GM, 100+ year old company, pivot. I don't know. But I think certainly people are they know Will Ferrell was in an ad. My question is, do they actually know what the ad was about? I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe that's all this is it's just bringing up the topic. I mean, obviously, one of the bigger issues to look at is that certainly as California has tried to put a really harsh standard looking forward for how they want to get fossil fuel related cars off the road in the next, 10 to 20 years? Ultimately, with the environment being a key priority for the new administration, with Joe Biden picking John Kerry, of course, to try to bring climate change to the front of the agenda, then we know that the topic of electric cars is something it's going to be important. So no matter how you broach it, even though, again, I'm not sure I understand the approach here, if it helps get people to buy electric cars, then everybody loves a contest. Everyone loves a arch enemy.
But looking at this through a public affairs DC communication standpoint, I don't think this ad was a success.
All right, let's talk about another ad that got your attention. This one came from technology company Logitech.
We defy expectations, perceptions and misconceptions. We defy what logic says we should look like, sound like, be like.
Yeah, Logitech, I think is interesting. Before we came on air, you and me were talking about buying more electronics. I haven't bought any clothes in the past 11 months. I seem to be buying more and more gadgets. Logitech talking about, I'm going to go to the paper here. To create the future, we must defy logic to the past. We must defy logic. So obviously this idea of makers, creators, people working at home, using technology to expand their reach and influence, I thought it was a powerful ad.
One of the things that we definitely do want to stimulate is this idea of a thirst for the future. And so I think that's what Logitech is really trying to sell here. They're trying to sell themselves as a Sherpa towards a better tomorrow. We know that technology, like you said, is what's helping us to continue on through the pandemic, the way that we gather, the way that we work. And so I think that kind of futurism is really what's in play here.
No, I think it's a real winner. And as we talked about, using these ads to kind of pivot to a new future, being aspirational, I think Logitech did a home run.
The contrast to this ad is an ad from Bass Pro Shops, that pretty much was selling the idea of getting away from technology and getting back to nature. We're going to take a look at just a short clip of this one, but this one was really more of a Henry David Thoreau, by the pond.
Talk dirty to me. Henry David Thoreau, talk dirty to me. I love it.
You may be feeling a little cooped up, but don't forget, there are still rocks to be skipped, trails to be trampled, fish to be caught. The great outdoors are wide open, and they're calling us like never before.
What did you think of this idea of getting back to nature with Bass Pro Shop? Again, this is a company that has a lot of presence between the coasts, and certainly is a big reseller for many, many goods to people, but maybe is a little bit different than the New York or Los Angeles attitude to a way of life.
No, I think this ad was a home run. I think you're spot on. Even if you're a grizzled New Yorker, and talking to the heartstrings about Muir, Henry David Thoreau, getting out in nature, I thought this was a home run. And Cabela's, as you talk about, is one of the most prominent retailers in America. In fact, the Cabela's in Milan, Michigan, just south of Ann Arbor, between Ann Arbor and Toledo, is the #1 tourist destination in Michigan. Just give you a sense of how important this company is. But reminding people, listen, we're blessed in this country. We have tons of amazing scenery from coast to coast. We have all kinds of different terrain to explore. And during this pandemic, when we're really limited from seeing each other face to face, there's nothing better than being out in nature. I thought this clicked a lot of boxes. The team at Cabela's did what it was necessary. Great job.
I want to talk about one that's a little bit of a different, more intricate understory. Talk to me about Oatly.
Oatly. So Oatly is one of the most interesting companies, and the fact that their marketing, their communications is so wacky, so crazy. They don't really have a marketing team. They have a mind control team, very tongue-in-cheek. They do a lot of off-the-cuff, very colorful, crazy ads. And this one was one of them. Here you have the CEO in a wheat field playing the organ, singing, let me get this straight, wow, no cow. What's interesting about this ad, it did really well in my house, by the way. What's interesting about this ad was banned in Sweden because the Swedish, a lot of Nordic talk on this show. It's interesting.
Who knew?
Swedish dairy lobby sued Oatly because they said, you're not milk. And in fact, it is not milk. It is oat milk, which I don't really understand oat milk, but this ad is actually 5 years old, and the company recycled it and they brought it back. I'm not sure how well it's scored in terms of, awards and what Ad Age thinks about it, but we're talking about it. It's got a very positive, it fits in the times, green environmental message. And, anytime you can get somebody in a wheat field playing the keyboard, you probably have a winner. What'd you think?
It's very funny because you'll notice that for much of what we're discussing here, obviously we do want to look at the political undertones of most of these ads, but in most cases, At least the Will Ferrell ad was a car company selling cars. That right now, this is a lot of these ads have nothing to do with the products to which they correspond, and they're trying to sell a mindset. You know, there was a Toyota ad, and we're going to show part of that here. It's showing a Paralympic swimmer named Jessica Long, and this, I don't even think this ad mentioned cars or showed a car. It showed the idea of family and acceptance. And this is a young girl who was adopted, but had worries because of her disability. And then she turned out to be, you know, a superhuman athlete. And she has achieved many times in the Paralympic Games. So, you know, I think that some of these brands like Toyota, they're trying to attach themselves to positive things in this weary time of hyperpolitics.
No, it's a good call. I didn't thought about the Oatly ad as being like a belief system. I think about people that, you know, enjoy almond milk, oat milk. They seem very feverish about it. There aren't a lot of people that run around talking about how much they love whole milk. So you're right. It's becoming a belief system. For me, the Toyota ad was a complete home run. It was the best ad, I thought, of all the ones that ran during the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're entering an Olympic year, hopefully in Tokyo, and then hopefully again in Beijing in a few months' time. I thought this was very on brand. Once again, being aspirational, telling the story of overcoming huge challenges and accomplishing anything. Visually, the way it was done, swimming throughout her life, I thought it was a home run. I thought it was a great, great ad. And you're right. There was no visual of a car. There was a slight flash of Toyota, the company. But outside of that, it was really a powerful message. And I think for me, that was the best ad that ran during the game.
Yeah, so selling a message. This is something that these ad agencies have looked at. That these really are opportunities for storytelling. With the Super Bowl, you've got some of the biggest audiences of the year. And so I think when you've got these pros getting in a room and they want to say, you know, who's somebody that we would do a whole documentary about? Now let's do a 30-second version of it. I think that's what some of these productions really are. I think that's also some of what went into the last ad we're going to look at. I know a lot of people are talking about this. Let's take a look at this ad from Jeep and see what people think.
There's a chapel in Kansas, standing on the exact center of the lower 48. It never closes. All are more than welcome to come meet here in the middle. It's no secret. The middle has been a hard place to get to lately, between red and blue, between servant and citizen, between our freedom and our fear.
There you have it. A Democrat, Bruce Springsteen, the boss, asking for bipartisanship. Original? I don't know. But the ad's creating a lot of attention. The visuals, 2 minutes, you know, shooting literally in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. Very powerful, very iconic, old school Jeep. You know, Bruce Springsteen spotting the cowboy hat. I don't know. I have no idea if this is going to sell Jeeps. We're talking about it, so maybe that's important. I don't know. I have a lot of mixed thoughts about this ad. There was also some blowback as an insider, you and me being from Michigan. The UP was not included in the visual graphic of the United States, so a third of Michigan was chopped off, and there were a lot of Upers that were displeased about this ad. I don't know. Brendan, what did you think about the boss in Kansas?
This ad was titled "The Middle." It certainly is about this idea of being in the middle politically, but also geographically. I thought it was a patriotic story. I thought in many cases that you could replace Bruce Springsteen with a lot of different messengers. And if I was the agency, after reading the story that they filmed this all in about 5 days, and that Bruce Springsteen did his portion in just 1 day, I would remake the ad in several different forms to replace this messenger and the overall story with some different people from around the country to show that if this truly is about the middle ground, that there's a lot of people who can help achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, I mean, Bruce Springsteen has apparently never done any kind of commercial work before. This is the first time he did an ad, but he's a partisan. I mean, he only does money. He only raises money for Democrats. I don't know. It was an interesting messenger. Donner is a great firm. They're out of Michigan. If we have some time, maybe we can show a video they did kind of, at the beginning of COVID, talking about Detroit and being aspirational. I don't know, but this ad to me fell a little bit flat. I think you're right. I mean, why not have a high-low approach? Just like Toyota, how do we find some athlete that not everybody knows? Let's make her the story. Why not show other Americans? Why not show people on the front lines working in the ICU, other essential workers? I don't know. But, listen, I grew up in Toledo. I've seen a lot of Jeeps. So anytime you can have a Jeep front and center, it's probably an okay thing. But did this ad reach its full potential? I don't know. Maybe not.
Like you said, Bruce Springsteen has not done advertising previously. Perhaps it has driven him to drink. Yikes. And so I just think the one thing, like I said, I'm not sure he's really the representative of the middle geographically, politically, or otherwise.
Yeah, I think, getting back to communications, actually was, talking to a client today, and she's like, we should strive for fascinating content. And I was like, we should strive for interesting content, because interesting means you're capturing somebody's attention and you're making them do something. I think in our line of business, we're always trying to get people call to actions to do the next thing. Is this going to sell more Jeeps? I don't know. Is it a step back? What is the internal corporate message? Like, are people internally that work for Jeep looking to go to the middle? I don't know. I think this ad probably fell flat. Well, Brent, I think that was a good wrap up of the Super Bowl. I think the big game is a real opportunity for companies to plant a flag, to deviate and pivot to new opportunities and new challenges. That was fun.
Absolutely. So you know what time it is, Mark? It's part of our weekly tradition here for our inner circle analysis. Tell me who you want in your huddle this week, somebody who's getting your attention in the news.
In my huddle this week, we're going legitimate football. I'm going with Sarah Thomas. She was an NFL referee. She refereed the past Super Bowl. Also coming on the heels of the big game, both the NFL and Nike are committing resources, time, and energy to get more girls to play flag football. I think this is really positive. Also, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 2 female coaches on their staff. It's really great to see women getting more involved in the big game, the Super Bowl. Brendan, who is in your huddle?
Mark, this week, who I'm going to pick is I'm going to pick Steve Jurek, who might not be a household name, but this was the Biden administration's appointee to be the new head of NASA. I think we've been talking with everything we've been saying about how the future is something that's going to be important. And along with that, our upcoming new mission to Mars. I think that as we continue to explore the technology and the energy and the different things that are going to help keep us safe here on this planet, that our exploration of space is going to be what helps get us there. I think Steve Jurek is going to be a big part of this. He's going to help us get back to the moon in the coming years. This is a thing I'm very excited about. I think it's been way too long since we set foot on the moon. We're still the only country to have done it. And so I think it's well past time that we go back.
I love it. And so does Wilbur Ross. Condos on the moon. Brendan, thank you so much. What a week. I guess we'll be back next week for more inner circle analysis. What do you think?
Well, I'm sure I can't tell you what's going to happen between then and now, but we'll be here to give you a little peek at it. See you next week.